Sorry. We are live.
Hey, what is going? Cool.
Guys, can I tell you a funny story?
No.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, it's not that funny, but you guys see this necklace, right?
Yes.
Okay, my mom saw it, and you know what she said? She said, "Why do you have a necklace of Wisconsin?" And I looked at her, I was like, bro, this is Pakistan. You literally got married in this country, dude. What are you on today? Poor thing. Hold on. She has her finals too.
Your mom?
Yeah, she's graduating. You guys didn't know this? She went back to school.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know
she's
that.
gonna be.
That's
She
pretty cool.
majored in political science, and
Then we got 6
I
viewers
looked
already.
at her. I was like,
You already know how it is.
bro, this is Pakistan. You literally got married in this country, dude. What are you on today?
We got man.
Was that my voice?
Yeah, whose YouTube isn't muted?
That's our finals too.
Your mom?
Whoa.
Yeah, she's graduating. You guys know this? She went back to school.
Guys, oh my
No, I
god.
didn't know that.
It's not my YouTube because I don't even have it up.
Qari Noman already trolling and we didn't even start yet.
Man,
I like how he gets on the live chat before the actual Zoom call.
is he going to be on today?
I don't think he's joining today.
He's not. Qan's not coming.
Oh, he's
today.
not? Oh yeah, that's true. But in general, I mean, that kind of happened last time.
For those who are currently watching or will be watching whenever this is said, we're just Taha's gonna join a little late because he has finals. Or he has to do a final assignment.
As per usual, this is Thursday, so we will not be having Qari Noman. He'll be trolling in the chats. Hopefully, today is gonna be about, first generation struggles. So stay tuned.
Yep. Okay.
What is this? I like it.
I said I like your sweater about 4 times, and you did not respond to me once.
I
You
swear I
did
didn't-
not say it
Oh, wow.
once.
we didn't hear it.
Because you guys are deaf.
We don't
Oh,
have
wow.
ears.
That'd be like
That's why
that.
we cover.
That's pretty
our-
good.
Thank you, Ned. I appreciate the compliment.
I said,
True,
man,
true.
you still have
Thank you very much, Nader. Thank you very much.
You said Amna, bro. Don't lie.
shot.
You know what, Nader? I'm gonna give you the sweater just because you like it.
Wait, do you guys hear me good or no?
We hear you well.
You guys just ignore me. I understand. That makes sense.
Sorry.
I responded.
Yes, Qari Noman, you are too old for this conversation.
Let me turn up my input.
Man, he's not even that old, guys.
I actually have no idea how old he is. He could either be 30 or it's like 50, and I'd be like, okay.
Me?
No, I'm saying that.
Wow, he's really gonna. He's
Ned said me.
not good, guys.
I am saying it. He's one of those.
All right, we're
things
gonna
that
have
you
one
just
less,
Can't tell his age.
We're gonna have one less panelist next time. No, I'm joking.
Guys, I'm gonna do the Al Jazeera intro, guys. All right.
How do you
Should I do it? Should I do the Al
Do it.
Jazeera
Go for
intro?
it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, I got you.
Let's hear it.
I don't know which move that is.
أهلاً بكم على راديو رمضان ويعطيكم ألف عافية. يا أيها المشاهدين، نحيي بكم في هذه الحلقة السادسة من راديو رمضان عن First Generation Struggles. Oh God.
That was beautiful.
No, wait. I
Jamila,
gotta
get done.
end it.
That's all I can say.
نسأل منكم أن تكبسون اللايك والسبسكرايب بutton وتعملون شير على الواتساب. شكرا لكم. ويا I can't do this. I'm sorry.
You were doing
Anyways,
great.
welcome to episode 6 of Ramadan Radio. Today, inshallah, we'll be talking about the, first generation struggles. Before we start, just remind you guys to, share this link with whoever you can, hopefully somebody that's wanting to tune in. We're going to be hopefully bringing somebody on today, halfway through. We'll update you guys on that so we can get his update on how he's doing this Ramadan, and maybe he can share with us a couple things. Should we go ahead and define what first generation immigrants are, or for sure,
I think we should do our reflections on the halfway point for Ramadan.
Okay. So how are you guys doing? I mean, I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. I've honestly haven't been keeping up 100% because of school and final exams coming up. I had some projects going on, And inshallah, after everything is done, I'm gonna be back on the grind. Start reading through the Quran more, and well, that's the biggest thing that I've been slacking really. But
Yeah,
how are
I
you guys?
told-
How's your tarawih going, and how is your Quran recitation or your goals in general going?
It's going. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, just with like finals and everything. Like finally, you guys, final today. I'm gonna keep saying that. It feels weird, but at the same time, it's just when you're gang. It's just it stinks when you're studying and then you want to pray Tarawih, and you want to read Quran, but it's like you're stuck doing a final. So I'm looking forward to having like slightly more free time. I mean, it's MCAT grinding after this, so it doesn't really end for me. It's fine. It's okay.
Just because you mentioned MCAT, like for me, also I had my last final today, alhamdulillah, and I was actually scheduled to take the MCAT in June, like soon, like less than a month, and then it got rescheduled. So now we have to wait another 2 months to take my MCAT. But like looking at it from like an optimistic perspective, I guess, like it allows me a lot more time to focus on Ramadan, and because the last like 3-4 days, unfortunately, I've just been grinding and studying and stuff like that. So now that this is done, like hopefully inshallah I can get more into it. But for Ramadan, overall, like it's nowhere near the same as like Ramadan in the masjid, but I think considering everything, we as a community, like especially in Milwaukee, we went off, dude. Like all the programming online, like brother Sheikh Amir's programs, like Qari Noman's Quran recitation, like alhamdulillah, we've done really well for ourselves considering the circumstances.
Yeah, it's been an interesting Ramadan, especially because of the whole like no masjid thing, and it was definitely very disappointing. It still is upsetting when you think about it, but I gotta agree with Anad. I said with Anad. I gotta agree with Nadir. Alhamdulillah, like Milwaukee really did go off, and like we were driving by the ISM today, and it was like free lunches at this time, so seeing the community involved in other communities or just overall Milwaukee is really nice to see too, especially in a month where you're supposed to give a lot. School, honestly, okay, like low key, I'm really glad that I didn't have in-person school during Ramadan. It's unfortunate because of the umbrella it's under, which is quarantine. But at the same time, I was thinking about it, and I would literally be in finals week right now, and that's half Ramadan gone. And yeah, of course, it was still a struggle with school, but I was still able to enjoy my Ramadan more than I would have if I was actually in school. But it's still sad. Like in my last semester, also, I didn't really have any final actually. But yesterday was my last technical assignment day. Alhamdulillah. I start school again in like 2 weeks, so it doesn't really matter. But it's been an interesting Ramadan, that's for sure. But I think it was a very personal Ramadan compared to the previous years where it was more community built. And the masjid is supposed to be more community. But like this Ramadan, I was really able to sit down at night by myself. Am I doing this for the sake of Allah? Or am I doing this for the sake of a show? Kind of, was the theme, I guess, for the month. But it's been good so far. It's going by really fast, though.
Alhamdulillah. Heba?
I definitely agree with what you guys said, like 100%. It is definitely hard to like, not necessarily prioritize, but just like budget your time, because even though we are at home, and for most of us who like usually commute to school, I guess depending on how far you live, but you just have more time to yourself. But even so, it seems like you have more things to do and not enough time anyway. And just balancing between like Ramadan and like your family and like yourself, like, your just time for yourself and everything in general, it can get kind of hectic. For me though, I feel like the beginning was kind of like went well, but I feel like I agree with what Nadia said. Like as we kind of progressed towards finals week, it was like, okay, they have so many things to do in like such little time, and it kind of got hard to to kind of like focus my time and put it where it should be. But I think that now with the finals gone, that inshallah we can just spend more time on like reading Quran and definitely like praying Tarawih, especially as a family, because I feel like even though we're not like at the masjid, like Nader said, like you can still do things like within like your household. So, but like praying Tarawih with your family, or just like reading Quran, sitting in a circle, like doing a halaqah or something would definitely be really nice.
Definitely. I think I agree with all of that. I think what we should, I'm gonna do now is define our theme for the day, and hopefully we can jump right into it. And which is, first generation struggles. I'm just gonna define like what a first generation immigrant is. really, it's basically as anyone whose parents immigrated to America. You know, obviously a lot of us here, and it was, you know, making
Mahdi,
Is he cutting off?
It's kind of like
Yeah.
hard.
Mahdi, you cut off.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Bad. All right.
Just repeat what you said. You're still cutting off.
Mahdi, you're frozen.
He's freezing now.
Someone screenshot.
This is the first generation struggle.
All right. Sorry.
You're frozen.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All right. All right. So basically, what a first generation immigrant is anyone who moved to America, all right, or anyone whose parents that's here in American education. And many of us here were born as immigrants, or born immigrants, making us a lot of us first generation of Muslims in America. You know, and there's a lot of issues that come with it for both us and our parents, really. So the first thing that is it still cutting off?
Yeah.
Cutting off.
Yeah, a little bit.
Try to go into like a different room closer to the Wi-Fi. If you can.
All right, you can introduce it while I'm doing that.
Okay. Sure. So basically what you were talking about is like as a first generation, and again, like I hope I get what you were saying because I know you had a lot to say about this. But as a first generation Muslim, that entails many things. Not only being the first person to come to or being born in the US, but at least for me personally, I was the first college student in my family. I was the first college graduate in my family. Alhamdulillah, today I graduated college somehow. But there's a lot of firsts. Thanks, guys. But there's a lot of firsts involved for us. You know what I'm saying? We have to navigate life. We have to navigate this rather confusing country. Like we have multiple different identities that we have to balance and navigate through as well. The Muslim identity, the American identity, our national identity, things like that. So I think that's sort of what Mahdi wanted to introduce. Just how do we go about balancing all of these different identities? How do we go about navigating all these different unshipped, I don't know what I was going to say, but basically like foreign territory. That's one thing. And then finally, just we wanted to share some of our experiences with you guys. How does it feel to be a first generation college student and a first generation Muslim living here in the US? So yeah, does anyone have anything to say about that?
It's a struggle. Like just in general, from the day you were a kid, whether you moved here when you were 10 or whether you moved here when you were a baby or whether you moved here. But before I continue, Taha is here. Taha is in the house. I would just like to officially announce his arrival. He's joining as we speak. But yeah, it doesn't matter when you came into America. You know, you're a first gen for that reason alone. Whether you came when you were 2 years old, assalamu alaikum, like assalamu alaikum. Yes, I was doing an assignment. That's another first generation struggle, but that's just a struggle in general, to be honest.
Yeah.
We're not all blessed to be finished at school yet.
Sorry about that, guys. I kind of moved back to my original spot.
It's better.
Thank you, Nader, for continuing on. But I think the first question I really wanted to ask, just to basically introduce everybody to us in general and like where our families came from. I think I want to ask everybody where your parents are from, originally. And when they moved here, if you have a relative timeline of where when they got here, and maybe if you have any simple struggles that they went through just at the beginning of moving over here. Amina, you have anything to speak on that? I know I cut you off.
Yeah. So I was actually born in Pakistan myself, but we all moved here in about 2000. So it's been about 20 years. I was like a baby. I was like 1.5, 2 years old. And it was from what I've been told, at least because I was a baby, I don't remember anything, but it was a huge struggle. Like language, this was pre 9/11. So it wasn't as hard to transition into America, in terms of, everything. But I think the biggest thing was definitely language and finding a job, because both of my parents were uneducated. Like they got their high school degree. At least my dad got his high school degree and that was about it. And then you come to America where if you don't have a college degree, you're kind of not making the best amount of money. And they had 3 kids to raise. So I definitely think that was the hardest job, the hardest part. And it's like everywhere you went, they wanted you to be fluent in English, perfectly fluent in the English. So you didn't really get the best paying jobs or the best jobs to work. So I think that was a really big struggle my parents had. I mean, my dad was a taxi driver. Mom works at Dunkin' now, as I'm sure most of the viewers know her. She's kind of known. Mom's famous if you guys weren't aware. But yeah, I think those were some big struggles they really had coming here.
Yeah, so like Amna, I was actually born in Pakistan too. Amna, I just have a quick question for you, just because I'm curious. Where in Pakistan were you born?
Karachi, Chhatrapati to be specific.
Fair enough. I was born in Islamabad. But the thing is, it's like my parents have a very unique timeline where my mom moved around. She actually lived in the United States for a little bit before she got married to my dad in Pakistan. She lived in London and Saudi for a while too. And my dad, he lived in Bahrain, like in Pakistan too. So I think the fact that they've had exposure to different parts of the world, it definitely had a huge impact on my upbringing. So I was born there, and then we came to New York, and my father, he was a pulmonologist in Pakistan. But then, as you know, when it comes to United States, you have to like basically start over, reset a little bit. So we went over there, New York, and then we just kind of moved around in the United States for a while, but we ended up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, literally the most boring town on earth. But you know what? Alhamdulillah for everything, right, guys? We're here. But the one thing I think I see in my parents for sure is that stress of education for everyone. And I mean, it's equal among like the sons and daughters. They really, I mean, initially they were the type of parents who said you either become a doctor or an engineer or goodbye, basically. But alhamdulillah, they really have changed their minds. If they've grown up, it's really awesome to see, because my sister, she's actually a business major, and she kind of had that I'm gonna show you mentality. And subhanAllah, I mean, she has like all these internships rolling in, job offers coming in, and she's younger than me, by the way. So I'm like, okay. But it's actually really incredible to see that. So yeah.
Nadir, I know you're from Syria, so tell us a little about it.
Yeah, so my family, my dad, unfortunately, he had a really, alhamdulillah, like he's doing amazing now. Can you close the sink? Can you close the sink? Yeah. My dad is doing amazing now, alhamdulillah. But my dad had like really, really, really rough. He left his country when he was 18 years old due to some like government problems. And then he traveled to Jordan when he was, and then around like when he was 22 years old, that's when he came to the US, or around that time. And so he's been in the US for quite some time. And then my mom came shortly after when she married my dad. So yeah, the immigrant struggle is so tough. And my dad tells me all the time, like he worked in every single job you could think of. He was a pizza delivery man. He was a taxi driver. He did other things that he doesn't tell me about, you know. But subhanAllah, man, they did all of these things just to get us to the point that we are at today, and just to make sure that we are living a happy and successful life. So I owe them everything, alhamdulillah.
Hey, but I know you're Palestinian. Come on, you gotta show some Palestinian love in here. What is this?
You already know. My mom was actually born in the US, but she basically grew up overseas. My dad was like born overseas, and they kind of met there. I think that in terms of like the struggle, it was definitely like the language barrier, like Amna said, but that was more so for my dad since my mom was born here. And I think something that was also kind of difficult, I guess, kind of going off of one of our previous topics about culture versus religion, is just that aspect of like women obtaining a higher education. And for my mom at the time, like alhamdulillah, like she had a really good educational opportunity and just a good background, but like my grandparents weren't too supportive, I guess you could say, of her like continuing her education. So it was kind of hard for her to like continue and like go to college, and that kind of gave her like the experiences. And I feel like I definitely learned a lot from my mom trying to obtain education, and in terms of like me getting to college and everything, and especially with my dad too, in terms of just like his background. And I kind of agree with Amna and everything, just like understanding the struggles that your parents went through and what they did to do for you to get to where you are today is just really important to understand. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I was actually born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And my parents migrated to Canada in like 87. They're originally from Pakistan, Karachi gang. Let's go.
Dang.
But Islamabad's super nice. I only went to Karachi when I was a little kid, but Islamabad's way nicer by far.
You're the real one.
But I mean, in terms of struggle, I think it's similar to like a lot of us where the language barrier comes in the way, and it's difficult to get jobs. So originally, I mean, I was in Toronto, and we had to kind of, because of my dad's work opportunities, and his businesses was struggling in Toronto, he found opportunities in America. So that was the reason for like kind of coming here, and then we've been here since. Alhamdulillah, everything's like alhamdulillah for everything. Like Adi said, we're in a good place through their struggle and through their efforts. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Well, last but not least, I'm gonna have to introduce my family. Is from Palestine, and I'm originally born in Palestine, but specifically Beitin. My mom's from a different village named Silwad. Hope maybe some of you guys know these villages if you're from Palestine. But I grew up in a small village when I was younger. Came here when I was in the 3rd grade. I actually, prior to this live, asked my dad how his coming to America was and why he did it. And he explained to me, like, obviously for opportunity, better opportunity. It's much better here for like a business to succeed, or anybody to succeed in their studies. So he came here at 17 in 1983, and he studied at METC, mechanical engineering, actually. And from there, he said, the most important thing that he ever did was like actually study. Education was like the most important thing he could ever receive here in America, which is why he always pushes it on us, making sure that we try our best in our studies. And he himself, worked as a mechanical engineer for some time and then moved on to business because he saw more success in it. Obviously, being Arab, gotta have those businesses in north side Milwaukee, Anyways, he built his businesses up, and alhamdulillah, there wasn't many struggles of him moving us here, because he himself was here like at a younger age, but he struggled more moving here as a teen, and I even asked him how he got to know the language at 17, because they teach English back home, but they don't teach English the same way you speak it here, or like at the level that you would speak it here. And he basically said, as long as you keep up with it, and especially because he was in METC studying, he had an easy time going about it. Alhamdulillah. I think I'm gonna move on to the second question, which is, since we are on the topic of our parents, what if any struggles do you think your parents struggled with, if any, and maybe like a specific story from your parents that they told you when they moved here. I know we have a lot to say about this, hopefully. I think I'm gonna start with Nader on this. Nader, how was it?
So
for your parents?
For me personally, I was hoping to go last on this because I don't know if someone else was going to address this, but for me, I think the biggest struggle that my parents face, and I don't want to speak for them, they're inside right now. I hope I don't say anything wrong, but for them, raising a child in the US or multiple children in the US is not an easy task at all. You know what I'm saying? And especially considering that it's just a new life, you don't know how your kids are going to grow up to be. You don't know how you can prevent them from doing all the things that people try to prevent their kids from doing, and sometimes, unfortunately, like, kids hold their parents to such I don't want to be insensitive, because everyone's parents are different and everyone has different experiences. But for me personally, I've seen people like complain about their immigrant parents a lot and say like, oh man, they're so strict, or they're so this and they're so that, without realizing that they had a different way of living, and they're trying to navigate this new way of life just like we are. You know what I'm saying? We can't hold them to a standard that we don't hold ourselves to. They are new to this, just like we are new to this as well. So again, going back to the question, what do you think your parents struggled with a lot, was just raising kids in the US and trying to make sure that we're not screw ups. Alhamdulillah, we're not. But yeah, that's what I had to say for that.
Yeah, I mean, Nader, I agree 100% with you, but I'm gonna throw myself under the bus. When I was younger, I was definitely that bratty child. I was like, Mom, Dad, why can't you be cooler? Basically, I had that attitude because when you're growing up in a place, again, Oshkosh, not many Muslims over here, didn't grow up with that. And I think we all collectively struggled. And the one thing that my family didn't know how to do at the time was to communicate how we're actually feeling with one another. And we kind of just shoved everything under the rug, and we just didn't really talk about how difficult it actually was on our, like my end as a child and on their end as a parent. But it really wasn't until I got to college, and I remember this, and this is like such a sappy story. It was the first time I was actually like alone. It's a freshman year, and I just started crying in my dorm because I realized, it's going to sound again so cheesy, I just kind of realized how much my parents really did for me, because I'm like, I am sitting here in this amazing college because my parents have sacrificed whatever they can so I can be better and I can have a better life than they did. And I just felt really ungrateful at that point too. So I think Zoya said this in the comments, and I saw that our parents were very mature at a young age. And I 100% agree. I actually talked to my mom the other day about this, and I told her, I mean, she had to make a lot of sacrifices coming here. And I said, I really don't know if I would be able to do the things that you did if I was in your shoes. I have no idea if I can. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad that you did. But that's also a scary thought, because then it makes me think of that. We all are minorities, but at the same time, we do have a privilege in that we get to experience two cultures at once, and we can bring the best of it. Not many people have that, and we don't really think of that as a privilege at times. Sometimes we think of it as a burden, but we should try to twist the narrative.
Inshallah.
I think you definitely bring a great point, Nadia. And to kind of go off of that, I feel like a lot of people, especially teenagers, like as they grow up, they don't only think that their parents are like strict, they also kind of look at them like, what do you know? Like they kind of see their parents as like fobs in a way, if that makes sense, who don't like understand the struggle. But if you really think about it, like, let's be honest, I think a lot of teenagers think that, like, as they grow up, especially in high school and middle school. But I guess, yeah, just agreeing with what Nadia said, you have to realize the fact that like your parents went through more difficult, if not like the same circumstances, and they essentially like did so much just so that you can, you know, exactly what Nadia said, just so that you can be in the place that you are today. I think sometimes it's hard to kind of realize that, because you can become ungrateful and kind of put yourself in a situation where you don't really see yourself compared to where your parents were like when you were younger. So my dad came from like really humble beginnings, and he came from like such a small town in Palestine. And I honestly just kind of sit there and I think about like how my life would have been different if I wasn't given the opportunities that my parents provided me with. And just thinking like, okay, like if I went to school overseas, for instance, or just like not having the same economic and educational opportunities as my parents provide me in America. And it honestly just kind of makes you feel really grateful for all the challenges that your parents went through and all the hardships that they faced, just so that you can make it to where you are today. I feel like I'm kind of repeating what I said, but I just think it's a really important point to emphasize, because a lot of us take that for granted, and we are honestly like really spoiled compared to other people who like don't have like these opportunities that we have. So just want to reiterate that.
Kind of going off of Hiba, like, yo, we're privileged, especially compared to our parents. Like, it's crazy. Like, my mom was saying how she's had the same winter jacket for like 15, 20 years. And I'm like, yo, I buy a new one every year. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so interesting. And I was like, I can get you one. And she's like, no, like, I like this one. It keeps me warm. And I was like, okay, but I can get you one. Like, I feel like I'm overspending now. But, you know, like our parents, they struggled so much to get us, like, especially to get us our education. Like, I gotta agree with Nat that I think raising kids, and then especially raising your kids to be educated in this society where, especially in a society that kind of puts people down if they're not already built on money, like that's so hard. That is very hard to do. Like, I don't know how many of you guys know this, whatever, but you know, I was raised by a single mother for most of my life, and my mom could have so my dad passed away in 2002. My mom could have easily just flown right back to Pakistan. It's only 2 years after we moved here, you know. She could have been like, I'm out, like going back to Pakistan, raising my kids there. But she stayed in America because she's like, no, I never got the education I wanted, so I want my kids to get the education. I know if we go back, it's not going to happen. So she fought tooth and nail to keep us here and to, get us all of us our degree. And alhamdulillah, she raised 3 kids on her own, all college educated, alhamdulillah, all doing great things. Like, the only people I can think who would do that are immigrant parents. Like, they went through so much. And, to kind of go off what everyone's been saying is that we don't realize how much our parents struggle. And I'm with Nadia, like throwing myself under the bus. At one point, I was embarrassed that my mom worked at Dunkin' Donuts, like it was, at one point, like that is a phase I went through. Unfortunately, that I went through it, but I went through it. And now I'm just like, I'm so stupid. Like, I'm so proud of that. I'm like, yeah, mom works at DD. You guys want donuts? Like, it's just a weird flex that I have at this point. But it's crazy because I used to be so embarrassed of that, not realizing that my mom sacrificed everything. She could have, like, literally everything her whole entire life just to raise 3 kids to get them where they are. Like, alhamdulillah, our parents are just, and kind of going when Nader says, obviously everyone has their own relationship and their own situation with their parents, but at the end of the day, our parents worked so hard to make sure we didn't have the life they had, and we should be so grateful for that, because Allahu alam, if we had that life, we wouldn't have survived. Let's be honest.
Definitely. Taha, let's hear from you. I mean, like, what do you think your parents struggle with, if you know any struggles?
So my dad, I learned all my hard work through my dad. I mean, I'm not, if you guys know me, I'm not the hardest workers, but when I see like hard work, it comes from my dad. And he grinded. Like, he's not really educated. His father passed away when he was like 10 years old, and he had 7, 8 siblings. So a single mom to raise a whole family is really tough. And for him to come out of that and then come here with not much of an education and grind like beyond anything I can imagine. Like, he never gave up. Like, he started businesses, they failed. He started businesses, they failed. He started businesses, they failed. But alhamdulillah, like, we're good right now. Alhamdulillah, all through his efforts and struggle. So I honestly really appreciate it, and I wish I was half as good of a worker as he was. Where, like, I'm so blessed, and whenever I feel like I don't have like motivation, or like I'm about to give up, I'm like, man, how can I give up when my dad had way less than me and he never gave up? So I see all my hard work from him. Alhamdulillah.
I mean, as far as how my parents struggled, I feel like we really didn't get to the essence of it. But going from how my parents struggled when my dad was here working as a businessman, he unfortunately, like, he had to work like 10 plus hours a day. It was like 12. I don't know exactly how many hours, but yeah, every day he would wake up at 7 a.m., go to work, and come back home at like he finishes work at 10 p.m. and then comes back home. And we weren't there for a lot of that time. I was back in Palestine studying and back home, getting raised back there, learning how to be back home. And he was away from family, and he had to work that many hours coming back home to, like, there's nothing there. Like, he's not, he didn't cook for himself. Unfortunately, he had lived with his brothers for some time. And it was a real struggle, him being here. And he had to come back every year. He would try to make his effort to come to Palestine, to come see us. And it's a great expense. If you guys know, like, the price of tickets going back home is very pricey. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know. And he would go back and forth, if not once, twice, maybe 3 times a year, just to come see us, and I think that was a really big struggle for him, in my opinion. Even though I don't think he'll admit that, like, it was a really big struggle on him. I can see, like, how much, like, he really missed coming home and coming to see his family and friends, especially, like, all my uncles were back home when we were there. But alhamdulillah for everything. But what I wanted to hit at is that when our parents came here, they had to leave their family. They had to go and leave their family. I don't think that anybody really talked about that too much. I really wanted to emphasize how hard that is. I mean, I worked with one of my coworkers when I was working in the phone store, in my brother's phone store. He came here as an immigrant, and he himself had to leave his family. He got his visa, came here, and he's working, right. And every day, like, I worked with him every day in the summer, and during school I would go to work twice a week, right? And if not once, twice a week, he would tell me, how much he misses his family, how different it is, like how much like he's like, man, you would never understand. He's like, you know how much I miss my family, my mom. Like I really want to like just see them, and I really felt for him. And I was like, that's when I really understood how my dad felt when he came here. You know, how he left his family when he was younger too. What do you guys think? Like, how do you guys feel like about how your parents really like left their family to come here?
Oh, Hiba, your mic's
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I noticed. I think for me, it's kind of interesting because like when my dad moved, side note, I was born in Milwaukee, but like my family spent 6 years in Palestine just so we can like, learn our roots more or less. But when he moved to Milwaukee, it was almost as if like all of my uncles kind of, not that they followed him, but they all kind of wanted to stay together. So I feel like it was that kind of sense of family, sense of community. So for me, like, I'm really grateful that I have like a lot of family, like on my mom and my dad's side in Milwaukee. And I know that not a lot of people can say that. But I think that just kind of added to one of the reasons why, just like how different parts of my family, like my uncles and my aunts, just decided to kind of live in the same area. But I guess just going off of what Mehdi said, I think just like having your family like move out from one state just to be together just kind of goes to show like they did a lot just so that you can essentially be together as a family. And I'm trying to imagine like having an Eid without being able to like visit my uncles and everything. I think that's definitely like something that's really important. Like as you grow up, just having a sense of family around you. But something that I just wanted to kind of mention is I can like personally relate with what Mehdi said about like his parents and the way that they kind of like, just to quickly like say this because I know we have to move on, but just like the way that they kind of had to coordinate like their jobs. So like for instance, my mom, I had this story in mind before, but I forgot to mention it. She would like wake up at like 6 a.m. and mind you, this is when she had like, I have like 4 siblings, so she had like 5 kids. And she'd somehow like get us all ready, take us to school, and like go to the hospital because she worked in the lab. And like somehow she'd do that like every day, which I feel like for us is crazy because like we can't even like wake up in the morning, go to school, but like here she is, like just, and this is like such a crazy story. I don't know. And also I guess like for my dad, it was also kind of difficult like when we were spending time overseas. I don't know why like these stories just kind of came to me like as you guys were talking, but as we were spending time like overseas, like learning our roots, like learning Arabic and stuff like that, like he would run his like businesses like in the north side, basically what Mehdi said. And going off of what Amna was kind of saying with her mom, like I definitely agree that the businesses that my dad ran and just his occupation in general as a taxi driver is something that I wasn't necessarily proud of growing up. But I feel like once you get to this point where you're really proud of how far your family has come, you really come to like appreciate that. Sorry, it took me a while to kind of spit the words out. But I definitely think it's really important to kind of realize those things and not take them for granted, because I think to a certain extent, like we all come from humble beginnings, and just realizing how far you've come just kind of helps you see like how your future lies ahead.
I mean, I just want to put it in perspective. Imagine they had to leave a country, right? Imagine some of us like leaving just Wisconsin or Milwaukee, wherever we're at, like just leaving our base like state is even a struggle. They had to leave a whole country. Like they're a whole like ocean away from where their family is. I mean, like just think like me myself, like I would not want to like. I feel like it would be a hard move to like move from Wisconsin to a different state, being in the situation I'm in right now, right? But for them to do that, like big change, man, like it's crazy.
I mean, yeah, Mehdi and Hiba, you guys, oh God, these stories always just warm my heart. And actually, I'm just gonna give you guys an exercise to do because I love doing this. Is not only talk to your parents, but talk to your grandparents about what they went through. I mean, for me, I am very close with my maternal grandparents, my nana and nanabu, and I would sit there, I'd be like, you know what, tell me about your childhood. Like, what did you eat? What did you do? Tell me a story. I mean, and my nanabu, he actually lived in London for a while, and he would just tell me these crazy things because he I guess was the pre-immigrant before. He's now in Chicago and Bridgeview. I think that's called Little Palestine, by the way. So they'll shout out to the Palestinians here. But anyways, what he said was he had to leave And he told me that his parents were told him not to go. They said, do not leave Pakistan because you're going to be trying to be one of those like flashy people and everything. Like, you don't need an education. It's fine. And he says, that's not happening. And then what's so interesting now when I talk to him, I mean, he like looks at me, he's like, you know what? I don't care what you become. I just want you to be successful because I struggled, your parents struggled, and it's all because we care about you. We want the best for you in this life and in the hereafter. Whatever you do, like that's what it is. So I just kind of wanted to add that too, because I cannot, like Matthew, what you said, I cannot imagine leaving even Wisconsin or like living in a different country. And then on top of that, raising kids. I mean, subhanAllah, our parents, any immigrant is a superhero. I'm like, honestly, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all their efforts because that is a huge struggle.
For me, I was gonna so I mentioned earlier that my dad left Syria when he was 18 years old. It sounds like any normal person like leaving for college or whatever, but it was far from that. My dad actually, he was forced to leave because if you're from Syria, you know, at a certain age, they sort of force you to join the army, the military, and the military is very violent. And it's a long story, but the point is he had to leave the country at a very young age. He left his family, he left his friends, he left his job, he left his, you know, his schooling, like all of that. He put that away and he had to leave at 18. Then he went to Jordan, a country that he's never been to in his whole life. He's never been to that country. He had to literally build himself up from scratch. And then subhanAllah, like he got married to my mom, and my mom had to also sacrifice because my mom left Syria to be with my dad because my dad can't return to Syria because if he returns, like he'll go to jail basically. So my mom had to go to had to go to the US to be with my dad. So you can imagine that. And at one point in time, my dad hadn't seen his family for years. Like even us who live far away from our parents, we still go back for Christmas break or for Thanksgiving break or whatever the case may be. But for years, he didn't see his family. And subhanAllah, man, he's around 60 years old and he's still grinding. Like Allah said, he hasn't slowed down. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him the strength.
Yeah, so when we moved here or whatever, there's this long story short, I'm a DACA kid. Just want to throw that out there, which means I can't go back overseas to my homeland. Neither can my family, or at least my mom can't. And man, that's just like, my mom was the eldest of three, and the reason she didn't finish her education is because she didn't have a mom growing up either. So she was kind of the mom of her family growing up. And so she took care of her siblings. Her dad was there, but he was, you know, too busy working and being with his brothers and things like that. So my mom was really like the one taking care of her siblings and herself, you know? And it was so hard for her to move here and just not be able to go back, especially because, you know, she has a sister who's schizophrenic in Pakistan. And it's just like, can you imagine, like, you have a sister who's the dearest person to you, and she's like mentally unstable, she needs help, you know, she has a problem, but you can't go back and visit her, and she can't come here and stay with you because God knows how bad the like mental state, like the asylum anything in Pakistan is, because it's terrible, you know. And it's just every time, like, she's unfortunately had a lot of family die in the past few years too, you know, and not being able to go back to their funerals, not being able to go back to do any of that. Like, I can't imagine. It's been 20 years since she's been able to even step foot in her homeland, you know. It's like she doesn't even have any family there left at this point. And that's this, I don't know, man. I don't know how they did it. May Allah bless their parents for real.
Allah bless them, inshallah. And I know they struggled a lot. And it's crazy how much they struggled, and we would never imagine how much they struggled because we never went through it ourselves. But Layla said something, which is we are not bred as strong as and simply wouldn't be able to handle the same level of hardship because we have never had to, you know, and we wouldn't have experienced it. And I think that's really like a strong statement because, like, unless you experience it, unless you actually try to even put yourself in their same shoes, even then you won't even experience the same struggles or like imagine the same struggles. But like, unless you experience it, I don't think you'll ever understand it. And Maisam actually said, for me, just bringing it back to us, you know, and how we struggled, or for her, she simply getting adjusted to an American school was a struggle from Palestine school to Franklin, man, she's like, man, that was a crazy change. And I can relate to that 100% because I did the same exact change. SubhanAllah, like I went from Palestine. I think me and my son were in the same school together at one point, and then I went to a different school, and then in Palestine, and then we came here at similar times. I think she came after, but we both came to Franklin, and man, that jump is so crazy, like culture shock times 1,000, you know. And it was crazy. Like I couldn't see like whatever I was watching in movies, like when I was back home in Palestine, about these schools having all these like different groups, like the jocks and the, you know, sporty kids and all these like other groups when you go on lunch tables. I mean, I thought that was just in the movies. I came here to high school and I was like looking, I was like, man, there's categories, you know, like where am I gonna fit in, you know? And I just obviously threw myself with like with people that are like me the most, the Muslims, the Arabs. And that's where I kind of like placed myself. And it was a really hard struggle because even then I couldn't relate to them, you know, like I really like, it was like a big culture gap. I was like it was crazy. And I was just wanted to see how you guys struggled, maybe with fitting in, you know, when you guys go overseas, they obviously call you American, right? But when you come over here, they call you Pakistani, Syrian, they call you, you know, they call you Middle Eastern, you know, Arab, whatever the case may be. Like, we really don't, like, in a sense, like, fit into either group. Like, am I the only one that struggled with this?
Bro, oh my gosh, man. When you were saying this, like right away, it was as if I had like vivid memories, subhanAllah. I lived in Jordan for 3 years, but I was a lot younger when I made the transition back to the US. So I did experience culture shock, but thankfully high school is a different animal than middle school. It was bad, but anyways, back to what you were saying. I remember in Jordan, like I would be known as the American kid, like the spoiled, the more American kid, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I come back to the US and it's like, oh, you're that fob Arab kid, or you're that, you know what I'm saying? So as an immigrant, subhanAllah, like you're just a stranger wherever you go. You're just a stranger wherever you go. Speaking of stranger, if you know me, you know this is my favorite hadith. Like, just to tie it back with like Islam in a little bit. The Prophet Muhammad said, he said, كان الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا فطوبى للغرباء. Or I think it's بدأ الإسلام, sorry. بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا فطوبى للغرباء. Islam began as a stranger and it will return as a stranger. So Tuba means something like praise be to the stranger, something like that. So I mean, dude, who cares if you don't fit in? At least that's my mentality at this point in time. Like as Muslims, as people of the deen, like we're not meant to fit in. So it is what it is.
Absolutely. God. So you guys ever hear it's like you're too brown for the white kids, too white for the brown kids? Yeah, that was, I'm pretty sure everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's so true. And the thing is, for my parents, that's where I mentioned this in a previous episode where when it came, me and my dad got in an argument, and what he basically said is, I'm either going to raise you as like a white kid, or I'm going to raise you as an American, or I'm going to raise you as Daisy. There's no both, like you can't blend them in. And I think just growing up now, I was very confused on why he couldn't understand it from me. But at the same time, just kind of like we said, he already sacrificed a lot, and it's kind of a lot to ask more and more from someone who's already gave you so much. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'll be a little lenient on this. But then for us, I mean, our parents struggled. But then the one thing I have noticed, at least maybe in our adolescent years, is that we go through different struggles, and then our parents will say, we did so much for you. Why can't you appreciate that? As if, I don't know how to explain this. It's like we don't get their struggles necessarily, and they don't get our struggles also. So I don't know if anyone wants to speak on that too, because that was definitely something I had growing up. Just one thing I'm just going to throw in there was mental health was a huge, I guess, stigma in the family for whatever reason. Like they didn't believe that, not schizophrenia necessarily, like the depression, anxiety. They're like, you know what, these people are being too sensitive. Like you just need to pray more, do all this. But now with all these amazing movements that the Muslim community is doing as well, they are slowly starting to change their minds. They're saying, okay, we understand now. It's not something about necessarily not being Muslim enough. It's more a biological phenomena.
I think So first answer the first generation struggle, and then to kind of go off of what Nadia said too. I went to Salam school like my whole entire life from K5 until 12th grade. Can you imagine that? Well, anyways,
What a
like,
trooper.
yeah, but like that's the thing. Like even though I went to a Muslim school, like an all Muslim school, I was just like Nadia said. But it was a little different in the sense that I was too brown for the Arab kids, but I was too white for the brown kids. So I was like, this is awkward. What do I do? And I had this weird like personality transition. I'm sure people had this with like their non-Muslim and Muslim like friends or crew or whatever it was. Like I would go to we call it a dawat, which is basically an azuma for the Arabs on the audience, which is another word, just like dinner, a get together, whatever it may be. And I had to be there, and I was like bringing out like my Daisy side, my brown side, whatever, right? And then I would go back to school, and I was like, all right, turn that off, flick off, time to go back to this, like, out of like non-Daisy mode, whatever it may be. And it was just, that was hard, like that constant transition. And at one point, one side obviously overtook the other. Like, I can't be two different people. I can't separate my school life from my personal life. That doesn't make any sense, especially because it's the ISM. Everyone goes to Saddam school. So it didn't make any sense why I was doing what I was doing. But, like, I didn't really have the whole, like the white, like being around white people kind of struggle almost, just because I was at Salam school my whole entire life for the most part. I mean, yeah, college was a completely different, playing field. It was very different, very hard. But alhamdulillah, like at that point, I still had Muslims around, but kind of just going off of what Nadia said, the whole mental health thing and how our parents didn't really understand our struggles and stuff. At one point, I don't know if anyone else felt like this, and I don't know if I'm just super emo for saying this, but it kind of just, I thought about it and I was like, I know I do, don't get me wrong, but I would sometimes think, because I did have, obviously mental health phases, not phases, but problems. But it did hit me at one point where I was like, do I even get a right to have these issues when my mom didn't have them, struggling that much? I felt, honestly, I don't know if anyone else like this, but I felt weak, because I was like, man, my mom went through so much. So why am I so upset over like these like minuscule things compared to what she's been through? And that's not a fair judgment to make, to be honest. That's not fair to me in any way or form. But especially in college, I thought that a lot, like, man, like, do I even get that right? Like, who am I to be this, and I hate it. I hate this whole like weak thing, but it did cross my mind a lot. And I don't know if anyone else feels like that, but like, there's a lot of mental health issues with first generation, because on one side you're like, man, this is so stressful, and you feel like you have all the pressure on the world because you're first generation, so you have to get like the highest doctorate degree and get a 4.0 and become this genius kid and cure the cancer and free Palestine and free Syria and free Pakistan, everything, and then at one point you're like, okay, but do I get to be sad? Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, it's a struggle.
Hard balance.
In terms of my own struggle, I went to like school with non-Muslims like my whole life. Only till I got to like UWM did I start like have a lot of Muslims around me all the time. And there was a lot of times where I felt like I almost like lost myself, where I was becoming getting too close with those people and letting my kind of tendencies kind of get involved with them like too much. In middle school, I became like close with a lot of, in middle school and high school, I became close with like a lot of Americans. And alhamdulillah, I didn't like lose myself, but I was very close. And at times I felt like it was really hard to like talk to my parents. And I don't know what the original like reason is. I mean, it's a communication struggle that kind of I feel a lot of people kind of go through, where they don't feel like they can open up to their parents. That was something I had, and that's something I'm trying to improve now. It's not the best, but we're getting there. I think any regular conversation that you have with your parents is better than none. So, alhamdulillah.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, Daha. For me, though, I think at least like when I came back from Palestine here to Milwaukee, I went to like for every single year, I guess, from like middle school to high school, I went to a public school except for 1 year where I went to Salam school. And I guess just kind of like that short transition didn't really like have much of a culture shock. I think that if anything, it kind of made me more exposed to the things that people did. I guess you can say kind of like exposed to like the real world, because I feel like for people who kind of like what Amna was saying, for people who essentially spent, she just went away. If you spend like your whole like career, educational career, like in Saddam school, you're kind of in this like bubble. And if you like don't know like what real society looks like, more or less in a way, because they kind of like shelter you more or less. But if you're not exposed to what really goes on outside of those Saddam school walls, I feel like you're not really going to know what to do in like the college career, to a certain extent, of course. But I think that for me, I was kind of glad that my mom was able to put me in a public school and to be able to have like that experience. And of course, like there were Muslims where I went to, at least like for Oak Creek, we had like a good number of Muslims at our high school. I think that just being able to kind of recognize pros in that, you know, I wasn't necessarily saying like, oh, like why didn't I get to like go to Islam school or anything? Like I just kind of realized like my place and being able to just kind of recognize that, you know, maybe it's out of my hand, but alhamdulillah for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Alhamdulillah for everything. I mean, gosh. So Mishi said something in the comments, and it's something that Amna said earlier, and I kept thinking about it. We're unpacking intergenerational trauma because we have the privilege to, but at the same time, we don't have the tools to unpack being first gen, which is so true. So I actually talked to one of my friends about this, and the way he described it, he's like, he is actually just a white dude that I talk to sometimes, just so I can kind of understand what's going on. And he kind of said, like, you're kind of going through survival guilt without going through the actual trauma. Which, when I thought about that, it kind of made sense, because just like what Amna said, there are times where I feel guilty for being sad or anxious or whatever it is. But then I'm like, you know what? No, I can't feel sad because my parents did all this and they didn't complain once about it. But then I think about it and I said, how many of our parents or our uncles or our aunts are going through something, some type of mental health issue that is affecting their life and other people? So I don't think we should feel guilty for sometimes feeling anxious or depressed or whatever it is, because it's a natural thing. I mean, it's very unhealthy to be happy all the time, by the way. I'd be actually very concerned if someone said to me, it's like toxic positivity. That's what I think of it, because it's okay to be sad. I think that's what makes us human. And for our parents, I mean, now when I talk to my mom at least about it, she starts to open up just a bit of like the trauma that she goes through. And I'm not gonna expose like what she's been through, but subhanAllah, like I just look at her and I said, how are you holding all of this inside you and still keeping a family together? Honestly, that is incredible.
That's a really very strong point, Nadia. Mustafa mentioned in the chats, he said, I feel like some immigrant parents have trouble aligning the struggles we go through here with the issues they went through when they were being raised. This is a good point. Mm-hmm. And I just want to preface this by saying that of course, I don't hold this against my parents at all. Like, it's just something that happens, unfortunately. But sometimes there will be times where I'm like upset, whether it's because I have so many things to study for and I'm just super, super stressed out. And like someone mentioned before, being a first generation student, especially being the oldest in my family, it's like I have to be successful. And if I'm not, then my brothers, like the entire family, it's like, I don't know, like it's just, I have no other option but to be successful, right? So obviously that brings about a lot of guilt and a lot of emotion and a lot of stress and a lot of other negative emotions. So that's a whole different struggle than the struggle and the actual physical struggle than our parents went through. And you can't really, I don't know if you can compare them, but they're both very important struggles in their own way. And sometimes, unfortunately, our parents are not able to fully comprehend that. But again, I don't hold that against them at all. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to mention, Mustafa's point.
I mean, you really can't put into perspective what they went through. Like, because, you know, like they had their own struggles. And so when they have their own struggles and they haven't experienced what we had experienced, like you really can't like say anything or judge them by not understanding. You can't really judge your parents for like not knowing what you're going through when they really didn't go through the same thing. They're trying to compare our lives to what they experienced at our age, you know? And I think that just goes hand in hand with what Jenna said. And she said struggles evolve. So my grandparents didn't always get what I was going through, neither did my parents. Nevertheless, they were still there for me, and like that's amazing, alhamdulillah, like that they were there for her. But I feel like at the same time, they really don't understand our struggles, so they have to like really work their minds to try to understand us. And I don't know if you guys had the same struggle, but like, I mean, when I was talking to my parent, like when I talk to my mom especially, I really use both English and Arabic. So I'll mix two words into one. Like literally, I'd go like, I'm gonna, like, the shib-shibs. Shib-shibs is not like, it's the shib-shib, and then plural is shib-shibain, What we say shib-shibs, like, makes no sense. Or like, I'm gonna go, like you just put ing at the end of any verb, I don't know if you guys do that either, but like yes. I literally add ing.
Sullying.
Yeah, oh, there you go. That's a good example.
Yes.
I know. I mean, how
you never heard that before, Nadia?
No, I think it's so cute. I mean, obviously because I'm not fluent in Arabic, but like I guess when it comes to Urdu, yeah, we definitely do that too with Urdu words. I would say my siblings more than me since I'm the older, but I think it's so funny and I think it's cute.
Definitely, I think it kind of. Oh,
okay, bye, Nadia.
Okay, bye.
Or not. There was something I actually wanted to add to what he said, and going off of what you said, Nadia, just about like family-wise in terms of communication and everything. I just wanted to go off of a comment, I think it was by Marwa. She said, I try my best to help my younger siblings with that hashtag oldest sibling things. I think that's a really good point because like for me, I am really, really fortunate to be the youngest sibling. And I guess to kind of contrast like what Nadir was saying in terms of like, he's the eldest, like, he has to show like, he has to like basically like pull the family and be like, okay, like I need to make everybody happy, like be successful. It's kind of like all that pressure on the first like kid. But I feel like for me, like I'm really fortunate to be the youngest, and like especially for my sister who already like went to Marquette, like she already went through this college experience and everything and obtaining a career and like all those nitty gritty things, mashallah. And I feel like even though our parents might not know some things and how to like deal with certain situations or like some nitty gritty details just about like how American society runs, I feel like together as a family, we can just kind of like make that work. And I feel like it definitely helps to just have this like structure and being able to just kind of like learn from each other that yes, like you learn a lot of things from your parents, but you can also like teach some things to them, if that makes sense. But you have to like go about it in the right way. But I guess it's just kind of like circle back to my first point. I definitely like to realize like some things and really appreciate like how I can learn from my older siblings, learn from their experiences and their faults. And I really appreciate how like even though it might be like really stressful for them in that moment, like especially the pressure like from my parents, that you can still like benefit from that. Just wanted to kind of mention that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some comments are coming in based on like those like English slash words, ijliing, thing. What are some Desi words you guys use? I'm intrigued. Like, what are some Desi English words that you guys use at home?
Before we continue, I just want to give Nader an excuse. His internet went off, so he didn't just dip randomly. I swear. He just needs to get Wi-Fi back.
What word do you use, Amna? I'm curious.
I literally went blank the second everyone started saying words.
I say chaloing.
Noman, QN said ghusling, like ghussa, like being mad.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Stop ghusling.
I believe him.
That's funny. That's funny.
I feel like because in Urdu, like we end everything with like rio, like khana khario, which means I'm eating. I don't know
why I'm forgetting about all the little. Okay, for me, Mehdi and Hiba's screens just switch, and that kind of freaked me out. But we're good.
Yeah, it switched for me too.
Okay.
All right. I thought like I froze. Did that happen to everybody? I don't know what happened.
No, you just like went blank and came back.
Man, what happened there? What's going on with the internet today?
What's the service today?
I don't know.
But yeah, I can't think of any words. I'm like blanking entirely. So if I do, I'll say it in the chat, inshallah. But as of right now, the only thing I got is badmash on me. That's all I remember right now.
What is that?
Badmash, that means like troublemaker in Urdu.
Oh, okay.
And I'm bougie, so it's the supreme logo, but it's not.
That's funny. There was actually something I wanted to say in the comments because I've noticed this trend. And
Chaloing. Yes, chaloing. Yes, I say that.
I just said that.
So good. I was like, yeah, I don't know what
It's all
else.
good.
What's
Chapal,
challowing is like, because challo is like yalla, right? So
yeah,
challo
Yeah.
is like let's going.
like let's go.
That's
Did
pretty.
your audio just cut off? I don't know if it's just me.
Can you guys hear me perfectly, or am I cutting off?
I think you just cut off for a little bit, but it honestly just again might be on my end. But there is something in the comments I've noticed is that people are talking about like their siblings and stuff, and I kind of want to talk about that too, if that's okay. I mean, because I think Mustafa said this way up there, and I wanted to bring it back because he says, "Has anyone noticed that like the older siblings are kind of more fobby, and then the younger kids are more like Americanized?" And I died when I read that because that is so true. I actually yelled at my brother the other day because I was saying something to him in Urdu, and he looked at me. He's like, "What are you saying, dude?" And I'm like, "Bro, Lord help me." And then I guess the other thing I have is being the eldest. Are you actually wait? Is everyone else the oldest, youngest? I'm curious.
I'm
Youngest.
middle child.
Youngest.
What about
And I
you,
actually
Taha?
disagree with that.
I'm a middle child.
Middle child. Yeah, my
Alright.
sister says that the
We have a
middle
good
child
mix.
is the neglected child, but
That's what they say.
that's what she says all the time. But it's just so interesting because just me being the eldest, I have like this big sister syndrome where I'm like, I need to help these kids because I love them, but they're dumb, and I want to help them because I don't want them to struggle the way that I did, you know? But sometimes I guess the message doesn't go across, and I think that they need to go through their own struggles for them to realize what it means to be a first gen kid.
Right.
That makes
I
sense.
mean, now we
Yeah.
discussed a lot of things. We discussed how we struggled, you know, whether it was with mental health issues, you know, between us and our parents not understanding, our communication with our parents, and so many other topics. I mean, we struggled through these, but we don't know what what our children are gonna struggle with. So just putting that into perspective, like what's our duty as our first gen, you know, immigrants in America to correctly set up our second generation? You know, how can we make sure that we understand our kids the same way, or like in a better way, and in a way that our parents didn't for us? You know, what's something that you would advise your parents, you know, that you can advise yourself to do for your children?
Low-key patience. Like, oh, that's weird. My throat just turned off. But I think a big thing is when it comes to kids or talking to kids or whatever it may be, like you need a lot of patience and you need a lot of understanding, you know? Like I'm the youngest. I don't actually agree with what Mustafa and Adi were saying because low-key I am the fobbiest out of my three siblings. But
Sorry.
I have had it easier with my mom for that reason. You know, as my mom went on with, you know, the eldest to me, it's been a lot easier to communicate with her because she's kind of experienced how, you know, kids in America act. But if, you know, I saw this in the comments too, where someone's like, my parents sometimes pulled out a belt and things like that. Like I feel like there's so many things that we can, you know, relay with our words. And I understand our parents didn't have affection or that much affection growing up. They struggled so much they didn't have time to fully sit there and manifest their emotions or even be able to express them, you know. But inshallah, like we won't have that struggle. So I do think a big thing is I want to be able to sit there and talk with my kids, like have genuine conversations at a, you know, starting from a young age, be like, all right, you actually punched the kid in class. I hope that doesn't happen, but on the off chance it does, tell me why. Like, should I support you low key? You know, did he say something dumb? But I'm just kidding. Never support violence sometimes. But you know, things like that. I think, oh, Nadir's back, if you guys are wondering. I think a big thing is communication. Having a lot of patience and understanding, and then assalamu alaikum Nadir. It's nice to have you back. But another big thing is just like to keep the one thing I'm glad is that, you know, like I think Hiba said this, we came from humble beginnings. And I always have this huge fear that when I have kids, inshallah, they hopefully won't have that struggle. But are they still going to be grateful? Are they still going to be humble? Are they still going to be, you know, are they going to be spoiled kids, or are they going to be, you know, good kids who are respectful, who understand the traditions, but also understand the tradition can be a little messed up, you know, like that's what I want. That's what I'm so worried about is that, yeah, I think I'll be able to implement into my kids a good relationship with me. But then the question is like, will I be able to implement humility and the ethic, the work ethic that comes with being a first generation student? Will my kids have that? And I'll be honest, I don't know how to implement that aside from communication. But is that always an answer? I don't know, man. I'm asking more questions than I am providing answers, but It's just I think that's a huge struggle we all think of or wonder or deal with.
I think a problem in terms of the communication between like us and our parents is that we fail to like put ourselves in their shoes and vice versa. And I think that's a really big problem because then we're always going to think like we have the chip on our shoulder, and then they're going to think that they have the chip on their shoulder and stuff like that. And that's just a communication like huge problem. And I think before we start thinking about the second generation, I think we need to do our best to improve that communication between.
All right, I guess it's my turn to leave next time.
Was that? Yeah? Oh man.
I think it's important for us to do our best to improve our communication with our parents. And in full honesty, our parents did a lot for us. They sacrificed a lot. And I don't mean this in any way or in any offensive way. Sometimes there's nothing we can do to change kind of their attitude. But that's not our job to change our attitude. Our job is to be good children to our parents. And the only way we can accomplish that is by putting our feet in their shoes.
I mean.
And like we need to make sure that no matter how difficult things get, how difficult conversations get, that we keep trying to make it good. We keep trying to make it better. If we can try like help them kind of sway their opinion, do it as much as you can, but don't lose hope. Don't try giving up being a good child to them, a good son, a good daughter to them. We need to keep putting that effort. And once the time comes, once we need to start teaching our kids in the second generation or the next generation, we apply the things that we learned from our parents. They've taught us so many things. They taught us, like we said before, sacrifice, effort, struggle. And we take that and we teach that to our kids, the next generation. We learn things from each other. Like I learned things from this group. I learned things from my friends, my peers. Take those things and teach those to our kids. And maintaining what if the shoe don't fit? Maintaining as good communication as you possibly can. It's going to be tough. It's going to go up and down. And I think maybe our parents struggled with putting themselves in our shoes, but we need to be able to make sure that we can put ourselves in our kids' shoes, so that communication struggle isn't like snowballing down and it doesn't get worse. So we need to keep trying, keep doing different things and see what works. It's a struggle, but we all have to kind of go about it.
That's a really good point, man. And just to sort of add to what you're saying, we as like us, we are in a very like interesting situation because we're sort of the crossroads between the older generation and the new generation. So I used to always think like it's going to be hard to raise kids, but at the same time, we've sort of had the best of both worlds in the sense that we've heard about the struggle that our parents faced, and we've also faced our own struggle here in the US. So you know what I'm saying? We have the best of both worlds, and we can sort of hopefully in the future better inculcate these lessons into our children. Oh, Matthew,
what's going on? Zoom does not want all of us today.
Remember, we're not.
So
What's our moderator? Wait, he's back. He's back.
I mentioned an incredible point, man. Like, he's back. He's back. All right. But yeah, I lost my train of thought. So Nadia, you can go ahead and say what you want to say. I totally lost my train of thought.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, Taha, what you said honestly resonated with me, and thank you so much for sharing that, because you have said exactly what I'm thinking, but you worded it beautifully, mashallah. And I 100% agree with that. I mean, to be able to become better, you have to learn from history, from past. Is there two Maddie's? I'm so confused right now.
Yo, what?
I don't know
Maddie,
what's
there's
going
two
on
of you.
today.
I'm kicking this one out. Okay?
Okay.
Bruh.
Okay, we're good. Sorry. Just going back to what I was saying. To be able to grow, you need to learn and to benefit from the knowledge about other people. That's why I made this a habit as I grew older, is to talk not only to my grandparents, but to elder people from the masjid. And I make it a point to not talk to just desis, but I make it a point to talk to like my Black Muslim brothers and sisters, my Arab Muslim brothers and sisters, and also non-Muslims, and see what they're going through, because their struggle, it's maybe slightly different, but you can still benefit from that. And I take that very seriously. And then Amna, you kind of said, and I always have thought about this too, is that when we have children, how are we going to teach them to have that same work ethic, that same mentality to be grateful and everything? And I guess what I have told myself is, one, you have to kind of lead by example. And two, it's also just exposing them to these people that have been through the struggle, and just say, you know what, like your nana or your nanabu, your uncle, like whoever it may be, this is what they went through. And we're not saying that you have to go through this too, but you should appreciate it, and you should take this with you and allow it to make you a better person, and allow it to make you a better person than we were, and be more successful than we were.
100% agree with what Nadia said. I think that something that I would probably try to kind of encourage is just to like branch out, because I guess kind of going off of a previous topic that we had with like culture versus religion, and I think somebody kind of mentioned this as well during the episode, that like I personally remember like when I first went to high school, and I just kind of like walked in and I saw like all these tables, and they literally, like, I even told my principal this at one point. I was like, you know, it kind of seems like our school, like when you go to the lunchroom, it's literally like little countries like on different tables. And just kind of circling back to the question, because that might seem random, but it's important, because I think that a lot of kids, like as they grow up, and Mehdi mentioned this, like he kind of resonated with like a certain group, you know, like the Muslim Arabs or like whatever it was. I think that like, we tend to, I guess, like lean towards those who are like similar to us. And I think that like, especially like for me, like my uncles and like just my family in general, when they moved to Milwaukee, they kind of like group together. And I think that that's good, you know, a sense of community. But I think something that I would try to encourage, like, and instill in like, I guess the future generation, is just the fact that like, yes, it's important to kind of stick with your kind, but you should also like try to, you know, branch out to like other communities, and not just have like, you know, a specific friend group that's like of one ethnicity, because you can learn a lot from like different groups of people. So exactly like what Nadia was saying, and I think that's really important to kind of address that, because if you kind of stick with like one mindset, you're kind of gonna envelop yourself in like one sort of mentality, and that's not necessarily gonna leave any like room for improvement. Just hearing from like different people's experiences, like personally, like when I meet different people from different like walks of life and different backgrounds in college, I think it really like I can resonate with them on a certain level, even though I might not necessarily be from like the same country. But it is really easy to kind of be like, oh, like you're Palestinian, we're buddies now, or like you automatically like associate something with them. They're like, all right, we're cool. But I think it's just important to recognize that there are different people out there, and you can learn a lot of things from different perspectives. I think that's a definitely important point.
I agree. Like, I think Nadia brings up and Hiba both bring very good points. Like volunteering and things like that. Like for me, it wasn't just my parent, like watching my mom's struggles that, you know, humbled me. Alhamdulillah, it was, you know, working at the hospital. It was working with patients who have been struggling with stroke, or who have had, you know, so many health problems their whole entire lives. You know, that stuff genuinely humbled me. And, you know, that just added onto it. And I think that's true, is that I think a big problem with people who don't have that work ethic, who don't understand the struggle, is that they were spoon-fed their entire lives. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong if you don't understand that not everyone has that privilege. And I think that's something that inshallah we can all implement into our children. I also just want to touch on Taha's last point about communicating with your parents. Yo, that is so important, to be able to sit there and patiently talk to your parents, and like, you know, sometimes they get mad, whatever it may be, but unfortunately in some cases we do have to have more patience than them. However, and I saw some comments on the chat talking about how, you know, sometimes parents take that as a form of disrespect, that communication factor, that you just want to talk to them. Mehdi, I like your name, the real Qari Noman. But sometimes that communication factor isn't always available for all kids. And unfortunately, that is the case. Alhamdulillah, like, you know, I don't have the full personal experience to say anything about that, but I have seen it with like my older siblings. I have seen it with my friends who, you know, have discussed it before. And honestly, at some point there you just hit a level where you're like, is talking even going to do anything, you know? But I think the big thing, and this may be like a very cliche or predictable answer, but I think the biggest solution at that point is to just make dua. Like, if you are respecting them and you're listening to them and you're trying to make them understand, but also still keep that level of respect, all for the sake of Allah, like I think that's going to help a lot. Because at the end of the day, like we shouldn't respect our parents because they're our parents. We should respect our parents for the sake of Allah. If you do anything for the sake of Him, it's never going to be a failure, you know. And
Yes.
keep your parents
Allah.
in your du'as. If any of you struggle with parents who are stubborn in their ways or who just really don't have that level of communication, and that's understandable considering the generational gap and the struggles they've had, make dua for them. Like genuinely sit down on your prayer rug by the lake, in your car, wherever you feel comfortable, to be honest, but just sit down and make dua that, Ya Allah, I'm really trying here, like really, really trying to be a good kid and follow the sunnah and follow the way of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and all the Sahaba and stuff, but like please help them understand. Like please help our communication get stronger, because I promise you, when you start making dua for them, it will work. Like genuinely making dua, Allah will help you out because you're doing it for His sake. It's not going to be a disappointment. And I'm sorry, that's the best advice I can give, but I think it's also a very helpful advice to give. Because sometimes that does happen where Q1 says, what if the shoes don't fit? And that's seriously, what if the shoes don't fit? What are you going to do? You can't put yourself into their shoes sometimes, But yeah, I just kind of want to answer that because I saw a lot of people in the comments were talking about that. And I think that's the best solution I can think of, to be honest.
I'd like to add to that as well. I agree 100%. There's nothing else I can like. She went off. But
Oh yeah.
Sis went off.
one thing, I actually learned this, I think last week or the week before. It wasn't something I learned. It became clear to me. I was reading a book. I forgot the name of the book, but it was talking about how it's part of we learned from like the Prophet ﷺ that we have to endure like for our family, like to keep that relationship with our family. Like it's not easy. Like no one has it easy. It's always going to be up and down. And we have to really endure for it. And that's part of the prophetic teachings, that no matter struggles you go through, I think this can be open for any family members, siblings, cousins, aunts, parents. We have to endure. And it's hard, but you just have to keep going. And it's just something that I learned. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's really important that we make sure we respect our parents, like Amna was saying. And I feel like if one thing I would advise someone to say, I usually say this in my salah, and I do this in every prayer I do, alhamdulillah. And it's say, Allahumma ghfir li wa li waliday, right? May Allah like forgive me and my parents as well for any mistakes we've made with each other. Maybe you once got mad at your parents, or maybe your parents miscommunicated with you in some way at some point. But at the end of the day, you have to really say, like, you have to really make dua and say, Allahumma ighfir li wal waliday. And if you say this during sujood, which usually I say, when I say it, I try to hit like 5 times during my prayer. Just say it a total 5 times, as long as it's odd 5, 7, whatever the odd number is. It's just saying Allahumma ighfir li wal waliday. I think it's super strong. It's a super strong dua, and inshallah, like it gets answered. And not just dunya but in the akhirah. And I mean, what's one dua that you guys maybe have in your mind to make for your parents? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to say like it has to be a specific dua that's about only parents, but what's something that you think you can say as a hadith, or like in hadith maybe, or some dua?
So for me, I can address this. I do not go to sleep without every night saying, and I make this dua in English. And I say, Ya Allah, allow me to repay my parents for even half of what they did for me. Like, Ya Allah, please don't let me die until I repay for my parents half of what they did for me. And
Arabic? You're just English, or what is this?
I just say in English. I don't think there's a legitimate way to say that. But yeah, that's what I say.
Yeah, for me, it's one dua I really make is that, like, Ya Allah, like my parents, mom specifically, both my parents, they've done a lot for us, for my whole entire family, for this community, for anyone they can. Like, Ya Allah, every time I do anything good, anything they've taught me, whether that be my academics, whether that be my deen, whether that be the way I treat people, give them 100 good deeds just off of that one action. For every good word I say to someone, give them 10,000 good deeds, because everything I am is truly because of my parents and how I was raised. And I think every good thing I've done is due to them. And if not, I still want them to have those good deeds, because like honestly, like alhamdulillah for our parents. Like I cannot say this enough. They have struggled so much. Like may Allah bless them with the highest levels of Jannah, and ease their struggles and ease their pains, because there have been times where my mom's just like, man, like I'm doing all this for the sake of Allah. I'm doing all this for the sake of Allah. I'm doing all this for the sake of Allah. And that's insane, like all this sacrifice, all this pain. And I really hope it's worth it for them, inshallah. At the end of the day, sometimes I can't help but think like, ya Allah, like for me personally, like, man, I make so much dua for Jannah just because I'm like, I hope the struggles of this dunya are worth it. And then I look at my mom, I'm like, man, I hope she gets it more than I do, like, to be honest. And I just want to add one thing too, is this. I think the thing that differentiates us from other first generation students is the fact that we do have our deen to fall back on. And I think like that's a huge part of who we are, and why we struggle, why we are willing to struggle so much to communicate with our parents as compared to other kids. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to just toss in there randomly. But alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, I'm learning so much from you guys and about you guys. Alhamdulillah, I'm so glad that I am. One dua that I make, and I do it as much as I can, it's like, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me the honor of being the coolness of my parents' eyes, and allow me to reunite with them in Jannah al-Firdaus with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just allow me to be with them, and don't let me or my family or any person that I know leave this world without being the best Muslim that they can be, without being a mu'mineen. Because honestly, at the end of the day, we talked about this before, is that we all need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and we have seen for ourselves how much mercy our parents have shown us, and their struggles that I'm pretty sure all of you can relate to this. They don't tell us everything that they have done for us. There's some things that maybe it's too painful, or that they just say, you know what, we did it because we had to. We're your parents. We're gonna do it no matter what. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just reward all of our parents, all of our aunts, uncles, whoever had to immigrate here just for the sake of their future generations, to have a better life, to be better Muslims, and to carry on the deen.
Facts. Just to wrap it up, I think before I do wrap it up, I want to just the thing you were saying, Nadir, a good dua for it is what Rashad said in the chat, which is Rabbi arhamhum kama rabbayni saghira, right?
Bayani saghira, yeah.
Rabbayni saghira, right? I think you can explain that perfectly, because that's exactly what goes hand in hand with what you were saying.
Sure. So this is a really, really powerful dua, mashallah. رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Ya Allah, forgive me and my parents. رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Ya Allah, give them mercy. كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. And Q1 can correct me if this in the chat. كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا, for raising me when I was a child, or for raising me when I was young. So that's
right, because us as children, as Qari Noman said, can we ever repay our parents for their sacrifices? When we were children, there's so many things that our parents did for us, like waking up at night from our cries is just one small struggle that they dealt with when we were smaller. I mean, when you say kama rabbayani saghira, when they raised me as a kid, like you really made your parents struggle. Like you didn't mean it. Obviously, you're a baby. You don't tend to like make your parents struggle, but you really did make your parents struggle when you were a kid. And alhamdulillah for our parents, for them, alhamdulillah for everything they do for us. I mean, hope I know some people in the chat maybe don't have their parents today. I mean, inshallah, they nothing but like the highest levels of Jannah for them. Inshallah, Allah yaghfirhum, yarhamhum. But I can I think that is it for today. I mean, thank you guys so much for watching. We I don't mean to put it, wait, sorry. I think someone has something to say.
Something I actually wanted to add real quick, in terms of dua. I think like a lot of times we feel like we need to do like dua in like a certain language and stuff like that, but it's reported in hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, I don't know the exact hadith, but he said the best dua you can make is one like that's from your heart with sincerity. So it doesn't have to be from the Quran or hadith or anything like that. If you can pour your heart out in your own language to make dua for you, your friends, your parents, your grandparents, anything like that. If you can pour your heart out with in your own tongue, as sincere as possible, then that dua is accepted better than a dua from the Quran that you don't even know the meaning of. So that's just something I quickly wanted to add.
Cool. Can I add one more thing? Sorry, just
go ahead. Actually,
I feel like I don't want to get back on here and not say anything.
I don't want to cut you guys off, because all these advice is why we're doing today's episode. Like really builds up to this point, which is these pieces of advice that maybe someone will take one of our du'as and actually say in their prayer, inshallah, and it's gonna really help them and their parents, hopefully. Go ahead, Hiba.
Inshallah. Yeah, so really quickly, going off of the dua that Nader just kind of mentioned, I think it also just kind of goes to show, Rabbi Rahmahuma, give them mercy, enable them to enter Jannah, inshallah, because they showed us so much mercy. And, we learn in Qari Academy, the word rahim just comes from, the womb of the mother. And I think we, as we grow older, we might kind of in our teenage years, not appreciate, especially our mothers, we all know the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't really appreciate how much our parents do, but especially our moms, and how much effort they put, to raise us. And I think it's just important to realize they went through all those generation struggles when they first came here. On top of that, for our moms being able to raise us. And I think Nader also mentioned that earlier, just a big point to kind of emphasize.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to emphasize the last point you're saying is ummak thumma ummak thumma ummak thumma abi. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam literally told us that our moms are struggling the most from any of our parents, and the person that we should make the most dua for is our moms. And they struggle so much with us, and they really sacrifice so much to put us in positions that they would love for us, and they care so much for us that they would put us in these positions. But now another thing I want to tie it back to is one of our past episodes we talked about how our parents have rahmah towards us, but the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has even more rahmah towards us. He even made he left his dua that it would be accepted for the last day or the day of judgment just for us, and that's a huge deal, because he could have asked for anything, in the dua that he would be accepted. I don't know, Taha, can you speak more about that real quick, and then we can wrap it up maybe?
So in terms of that dua, I think Qari Noman mentioned it in episode 4, best episode by far. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it. But he mentioned that every prophet that was sent down to us made a dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted for with no question asked. And every single prophet asked that dua. And a lot of times it was for their own personal benefit and things like that. But the prophets, I don't know exactly, but a lot of them sometimes did, maybe, I don't know. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's dedicating his dua that is 100% accepted for sure, no questions asked. He's saving that for us, and that dua will be used and saved for the Day of Judgment, when a lot of us are struggling and we don't know what we're going to be doing. And
so just the note I was trying to make from that is, if whenever you remember talking about or making a dua for your parents, remember making dua for Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just put that hand in hand, and inshallah, our du'as will be accepted. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. The last thing I would like to say is, anybody that's watching, please watch it. On Friday we're gonna have a Instagram live with our boy Nader. He's gonna be introducing himself. If you have any questions, hit us in the DMs on Instagram. If you have any, we're gonna put up some stories for Nader's next live video. Other than that, Saturday we're gonna have an episode with Qari Noman, and inshallah we will be doing on a topic that everybody's interested in. So again, go on that story, vote for what you want to hear. Thank you guys so much for all the amazing comments you guys had. I love, honestly, there was so much facts that people were spitting, and I appreciate everything that you guys are saying. And Amna, at the end, man, you wrapped it up really nice with your quotes, man. Jazakallah khair. And inshallah, we will see you guys on Saturday.
share our posts, show love. We really appreciate you guys.
Good luck on finals. If
Put
you
a
got
like on the
finals,
video.
if you haven't, congrats, you're done.
Subscribe, guys. Subscribe to the YouTube. We're trying to get a gold plaque.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Peace out. Assalamu
Gold plaque.